Now, what do Martin Luther King, Picasso and Prince all have in common? Well, they all died without making a will.
Well, one woman who says don't do that is solicitor Karen Walsh. Karen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
A very simple and straightforward question. Why should we make a legal will?
There's loads of reasons to make a legal will. There's no good one not to. I suppose the first thing would be that you get to appoint your executor who will administer your estate. If you don't, the law will decide for you. You get to decide who gets your most valuable assets when you pass away. If you don't, again, the law will decide who gets your assets. You also have the benefit of when you go into a solicitor, they can advise you on the most tax-efficient way to structure your will, so to minimise any tax liability. I suppose you get to appoint guardians if you have children that are under the age of 18.
Yeah.
Yes.
Karen, it's interesting because you'd kind of think to yourself, do you have to go to a solicitor, sign it all in a solicitor's office? And there's a very interesting case. Now, this is a different jurisdiction, of course, different legal jurisdiction in Australia. Tell us about this text message that was upheld in court as a will.
There were a man, before he committed suicide, he wrote, he directed in a text message which was unsent how he wanted his assets to be divided. So he said that he wanted his uncle and his nephew to take his assets, and he listed out his specific bank accounts. He was very specific about the property he wanted to take, and he was married and he had a child at the time. So this was brought to the court, and the judge upheld that this unsent text message was a valid will.
But that's not normal that would happen. That has never been tested in Ireland.
That's very unusual. In 2006 in Queensland and Australia, the law was changed where it was brought in that less formal wills would be regarded could be regarded as valid by a judge.
Can you make a will at home on your own?
You can. I mean, everybody's entitled to make a will, but I would strongly advise against it, because if it's not properly drafted, it can be considered invalid, or it can mean that it'll be harder to administer the estate, and it can leave people in a very vulnerable position and ultimately facing a court battle if it's not properly drafted.
And you know what? Your nearest and dearest as well, when a will is not made, they have to wait an awful long time to actually even get access to bank accounts and all this type of thing that they wouldn't have. Let's go through some questions. Excuse me. A lot of questions in on this, Karen, as you can imagine. We should say 50%, is that the stat?
50%
of Irish people do not have a will made. So I suppose we need to get better at that. My son recently died tragically without making a will. He was married, 2 small children. His wife also has 3 adult children who aren't his, but he was the main breadwinner. With regards to inheritance, how does this now pan out? My concern is for his 2 very young biological children and their inheritance, Karen.
Well, in that case, he died without making a will, so his wife is entitled to 2/3 of his estate, and his children are entitled to the remaining 1/3. So they're entitled to 1/6 each, and the non-biological children don't have any automatic entitlement to his estate.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
But what about his ex? No. Well, he said he had she has, the non-biological children have no entitlement to his estate.
Non-biological children have no entitlement
so
to the estate.
2/3 for the wife and 1/3
for the biological children.
So it's very plain, that's the way it is?
That's the way it is,
Okay, that's fairly black and white, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
We have another one here. My father-in-law died last year. He left behind a 90-acre farm worth €700,000, a lot of money. My husband didn't do a farm course in time because he was too busy working. I'm worried now how much the inheritance tax is going to be. My teenage son wants to start up a farm in a few years' time, but what will be left of the farm? It breaks my heart.
Well, the biggest thing there now is to talk to a tax consultant or accountant as to whether her husband is entitled to claim agricultural relief, because you can get 310,000 tax-free from a parent as part of a gift or inheritance, but obviously that's worth 700,000. So agricultural relief really is the saving grace for farmers taking a farm, which reduces the inheritance by 90%, which leaves 10% left over, and he will have his 310,000. So in many cases where someone is inheriting a farm, they will take it free from inheritance tax. But they need to make an appointment with a tax consultant.
Yeah,
Okay,
so don't be worrying about the farm course at the moment. Just get it into the son's name, and then he can pass it on to his son the same way that it was passed to him.
There's the option to lease it instead of farming the land, so you can lease it to someone who will farm the land.
Yeah. And you just take your time then with the whole thing with course and stuff like that.
Yes.
You're buying time there.
My father passed away a year ago, and my mother has completely taken over the family home and claims it as his own. The house is a council house, but on my father's land. My mother says she signed a form years ago at the solicitors that my brother made her and my father sign. She had no idea what it was. Is it valid? Well, I suppose you don't know what it is now, Karen, first. And can you give a counsel as a way in a will?
Well, I suppose in relation to that, it's the first thing you need to do is do a title search, find out who owns the land on which this council house has been built.
Okay, but let's say it was the father's house, as they're saying here.
So
it's the father's land.
You need to establish that the father made a will, and you need to see, was the will made in that case?
What they're saying, they signed a form. So basically they're saying here, the father passed away, the brother's taken over and is claiming the house on his own.
Well, that lady needs to find out what she actually signed. So she needs to ask a solicitor, first of all, for a copy of what she actually signed. It may be not what she thinks at all, but...
but can this person do that? Can the brother just step in and just claim these things? Not really.
Well, people do. They go into possession and occupation of an asset that they may have no legal entitlement to.
And unless you challenge them, they can probably hold on to it.
Well, there's a danger then if they're in occupation for over 12 years, they can make an application for squatters' rights.
Yes.
So she needs to act quickly.
It's even amazing. We've only gone through some of the questions here so far. How, say, when families are involved, you think, sure, it's only the family should listen. We'll all get on here. That is not the case at all. Sure,
it's not.
Well, what happens is, like, for example, if someone's promised the business and there's no will and that they don't get the business then or the farm, etc., everybody, all the children, they all have an equal entitlement, and they may have no interest in the business, but they'll all have an interest in the value of their share in the estate.
Yes, we have another one here now. I'm separated from my husband, but it is not a legal separation. What happens to our house in the event of a death?
That's very important. If you're separated from your spouse, you need to make a will or update your will, because if you have a will made, you're probably giving everything to your spouse. So the first thing you need to do is change your will, update your will, and then you really need to go down drafting up a separation agreement, renouncing each other's rights to each other's estate.
Okay. So if a circumstances change at home like this, say a couple breaks up, or if there's another child comes along as well, you should be updating your will all the time.
Updating your will as circumstances change. A lot of people don't know marriage revokes a will, so you may have made a will before a marriage. Once you get married, unless it's made in contemplation of that marriage, that will is revoked.
Okay. When you get married, if you bring an asset to a marriage, for example, a house to a marriage, an asset you've had previously, is that house equally both of yours then, or can the assets that are brought to a marriage separately, or is that looked at differently by court?
In the event of a divorce situation,
in the event of a divorce,
it forms part of the pot of assets in a divorce situation.
So that's really important for wills as well in that context too.
Yes.
Okay. Heath Ledger, the actor who died tragically and far too early in life, he was one of those people who didn't update his will apparently, and then his daughter was born. So children like that, would they have to go to court then to fight for their rights of a part of someone's estate if the will is not, if it's not specified in a will?
Well, you can bring an application in Ireland where you can allege that the parent didn't make provision for that child and they failed in their moral duty, and a judge will direct what portion that child is to get in the estate. In Ireland, you can do that.
How much does it cost to make a will?
It's very reasonable. €100, depending, 200, 250
max. If it's a big thing.
It's a trust or you're establishing.
So just an ordinary will between
bog standard will,
bog standard job,
€100.
a married couple with 2 kids, say for example, a couple hundred quid.
It represents excellent value for money.
And it keeps you safe as well, doesn't it?
Keeps you safe.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
Karen,
and it keeps your family safe.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. I'm just inquiring about a field that was left to me by my late brother. Another brother and a solicitor are joint executors, but I still haven't got my field, and I can get no information from either of them. It will be 9 years next January. How long should it take? So this is obviously part of a farm that was left to a sibling.
Well, I suppose I would have a question: has an application been made for probate yet?
Can you explain probate to people?
Probate is the legal process where you have a will formally recognised by the High Court, and then it allows the executor to administer the estate in accordance with the will and vest all the assets in the beneficiaries.
Okay, so that you need to check on that. Has it gone formally through?
Has it got formally through, yes. Okay. And have steps even started to lodge all the paperwork in the
Because 9 years seems like a long time.
No, that shouldn't. That's
wrong.
That's wrong.
Okay,
it shouldn't take that long.
Lovely.
Karen,
Karen, thank you very much for being
You're
with us.
welcome.
We'll have to have you back again. Lots
Certainly
of
will.
more
I think-
questions coming in on this issue and a lot more issues as well.
And it really has, as I said there a while ago, when you talk about families and stuff, and when you put money into that
It's all about
equation,
money.
that everything actually just changes.
The best of friends
the
are
best of
enemies.
friends and everything, yes.
Yeah.
So if you'd like more information on what we were just chatting about there, you should contact citizensinformation.ie or your local solicitor. Now, coming up after the break, we'll meet the man behind one of the funniest Irish characters in recent years.
Yes, he's a good guy, Paul Howard. He's going to be on the couch with us in a few minutes. See you then.